Hello everyone, this is Jennifer, so glad you're here. Today I have 4 cards for you. The first 2 cards are Peekaboo pop-up cards. I did a video a few weeks ago showing how to create this type of card. Well, today I'm back, as I promised I would be, to show how to create different sizes of this card and a creative way to stretch those dies. Then I have 2 shaker cards that are pretty easy to pull together, but shows you how to take a background die and step it up by adding that shaker element to it. All 4 of these cards feature the new Simon Says Stamp Lawn Fawn collab stamp set for STAMPtember. It's called Sledding By. It's this 4x6 stamp set. You can either buy it like this or along with the coordinating dies. Now this is one of those STAMPtember sets that is available now, and once it's sold out, it's gone forever. It's a one-time thing, so if you're interested, be sure to check it out. But you could definitely do today's cards with any stamp set you may have. Now for the first 2 cards, which are the Peekaboo pop-up cards, I'll be using the Lawn Fawn Peekaboo pop-up die set. Now I did a very complete video on how to use these dies for basic cards and creative versions of these cards. I will link to it up here on the top right. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. It'll help to make today's video a little easier to digest. So I'll link to that again in the top right. I feel like if you're going to invest in an interactive die set like this, you want to have lots of ways to use it. So that's why I'm back to share more today. So first we're going to start by using this die set for a horizontal card instead of a vertical card as it's meant to be used. So here is the card example. I think it's best to look at the completed card first. This is what it looks like when it comes out of the envelope. And then when you pull it open, check out that cute little image that pops up. Again, in my other video, we made vertical cards, so tall cards, but here we're going to make that sideways card or horizontal card using the same die set a little creatively. Okay, so I started out by stamping and coloring some images from that Simon Says Stamp Lawn Fawn stamp set that I showed you. I'm now using my scissors to cut these out because I don't have the coordinating dies. Don't be afraid to do fussy cutting. It's a great way to save money. And really, if it's not cut out perfectly, it doesn't matter at all. Now I use the new OLO Markers to color these. These are new alcohol markers. A lot of people have been asking me about them. I do have them. I am testing them out, and I will come back and do a video when I feel really comfortable sharing the information about them. But just a heads up, I really do like them, and the price point is great. If you're interested in seeing more about them, I'll link to the OLO Markers below. Okay, so let's create the card base for this card. Now the die set from Lawn Fawn creates a vertical card, as I mentioned. We want to do a horizontal. So we're going to create our own card base this time. To do this is very easy. You just need a piece of heavyweight cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 7 inches long. We're going to do 2 score lines on one side of this, and they're at 3/4 inch and 1 1/2 inches. I will then fold back first and then in next. So we have this little Z fold at the end of this piece. When folded and flattened, it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, which is a traditional card size. All right, now we need another piece of the same size. So 4 1/4 by 7 inches, and we're scoring in the same place. 3/4 inches and 1 1/2 inch. This time I will fold forward first and then fold back. And then we will reinforce those fold lines using our bone folder. These 2 pieces mimic what comes in the die set to create a vertical card, but we're doing horizontal today. Now that blue piece will be the background. The white piece will be that slope in the front. I'm using one of the dies in the Peekaboo pop-up die set from Lawn Fawn to create that slope on the white piece. I'm first cutting it over towards the right-hand side. Then once I run that through my die cut machine, I will line it up again, kind of connecting this die with the die cutting we've already done, tape it in place and run it through again. The die isn't long enough to cut it in one pass through, but by doing 2 pieces together, it works great. Now I'll reinforce those score lines that we created before, and here is the snow slope that will be the front of our interactive card. This will go right on top of that blue background, and you can kind of see how this will fold open when you pull the sides. Next, I wanted to add some foiled snowflake to that blue background. Now, if you don't have a foil machine, Lawn Fawn does have pattern paper available that has a foil finish to it. I'll link to that below. But I have a foil machine, so I'll be using this Lawn Fawn Snowflake background hot foil plate to add my foil. I'm lining it up with this large side of our background piece, the blue piece. I'm taping the hot foil plate to that area. Then I will slide my Glimmer hot foil underneath it, pretty side facing up, and then I'll close the hot foil plate on it. We will now take this and put it face down onto our Glimmer hot foil machine. Any hot foil machine will work. You just want whatever works with your die cut machine. Once the timer's done, I can take all those plates and run it through my die cut machine, which applies the pressure. If you want a more comprehensive look on how to use a foil machine, I'll link to a video up here on the top right. So once that's run through, check this out, this beautiful foil along our blue background. But I want that foil to go to that outside edge too, those two little flaps over on the right. So we're just going to repeat the process on that area. So I'll take that same hot foil plate and just line it up on that area that didn't foil. I'll put a tape up here that creates kind of a hinge. I'll lay some hot foil underneath it from Spellbinders. Then I'll press that down, pick this all up and put it face down onto my hot foil machine. Then put the plates on top, press the timer button. When it's all done heating up, we can run it through our die cut machine, which applies the pressure. And then we will have foiling over the entire background. I just felt this added a lot to this card, but you could definitely do stamping on the background, use pattern paper, whatever you want. I love how the foil looks like it's pressed into that cardstock. Now on the little snowbank, the other piece, the white one, I have stamped our sentiment. It says sledding by to wish you a happy winter from that STAMPtember Lawn Fawn stamp set. Before we glue these pieces together, we need to create the pop-up feature inside that'll allow that sledding element to pop up. For this, I'm using one of the dies included in that Lawn Fawn Peekaboo pop-up die set. There are these 3 different pop-up elements. You get to choose which one you use. My other video explains how they're different. But for this card, I'm just going to use one of them, and it cuts this shape that you see here. Now the die also creates little score lines, and I'm using a marker to kind of mark where the score lines are so you can better see it in the video. I'm going to fold along these score lines towards myself. So you can see I'm folding them both towards myself. Then I will use my bone folder to reinforce them. If you watch my other video, you probably saw me do this many times. It's very easy to do once you've done it a few times. Now we're going to put liquid adhesive only on that tiny little triangle flap. That's where the adhesive always goes. I'm going to set that aside so it's ready. And then I'm putting adhesive on this little flap on the left side of our snow slope, and I'm putting it right into the bottom left corner of our blue background. Now I really want to use something strong here, so make sure you use double-sided tape or liquid adhesive. Now we're going to take this other piece, I'll put a little liquid adhesive on there because it might have already dried. I'll flip it over and I'm going to place this down between the 2 score lines on that white flap. So I'll just press this here. I'm going slow so you can see it better. Notice I have some torn paper up there on the top. Just ignore that. I decided to move it down, but as long as you have that triangle area glued between those 2 score lines, you're good to go. Now let's close this up. I'm putting liquid adhesive on the right-hand side of this flap. I will fold down the blue score lines and then close this down, and it connects nicely. I'll put something heavy on there while it dries. So let's test it out. When it's closed, you don't see that little interactive piece, but when you pull it, it pops up. To add that little sledding image, we're going to flatten our card out so the interactive pop-up sticks out. I'll put some adhesive on it, and then I'll position this where I think I want it to be. Now let's test it and make sure it hides behind the snow slope when it's closed. Oh, look it's peeking out, so I need to move it over a little bit. If it peeks out the bottom, you want to move it over to the left a little bit. Let's try it again. There we go, it's peeking out a little bit, so we'll move it a little bit more, and now we have a good position. So now I have this fun pop-up element. We can add anything to this now that we want, as long as it doesn't get in the way of that pop-up element. I decided to add another little snow slope on the bottom right, and I'm also adding some little trees from the same stamp set. I didn't have the die, so I just used scissors to fussy cut them. After I added a few trees, I also added some silver sequins for some shine. But you really could decorate this however you want. And you could do any theme you want. That's the fun part about an interactive die set that can be used in so many ways. So let's look at the completed card. It flattens to fit into an A2 card envelope. So flattened, the card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now once you pull it, look at that. You have that surprise element that pops up. Now I do have some iridescent sequins on there that go nicely with the iridescent foil I did in the background. But really, once you get the interactive element done, it doesn't take much more time than a regular card. And it's extra special because of that pop-up feature. So this shows you how you can take that Lawn Fawn Peekaboo pop-up die set that's meant for vertical cards and change it up for a horizontal card. Okay, my next Peekaboo pop-up card is a 5x7 vertical card that has a double pop-up feature, but it uses the same die set. So here's the completed card so you know the direction we're headed. It's in a 5x7 envelope. When you pull the sides, check it out. It has 2 elements that pop up, and it has lots of dimension to it. It looks really cool standing up on display. So this uses the same die set, but again, we're just going to stretch the supplies a bit so that we can get more from that die set. Let's start with the background first. For that, you need a piece of cardstock that is 8 inches wide by 7 inches tall. We're going to do a few score lines at 3/4 of an inch, 1.5 inches, 2 1/4 inches, and 3 inches. Basically, all of those score lines are 3/4 of an inch apart. Now we can fold along these score lines. We're going to do an accordion fold. I will first fold back and reinforce that, and then fold towards me, reinforce that, then fold back. So we'll have an accordion fold on the edge of this blue background. I do encourage you to use heavyweight cardstock when you create interactive cards like this. Floppy cards are never a good thing, especially when interactive, because we want them to stand up and be strong on their own. Now, any of your craft companies or stamp companies have heavyweight cardstock, so you should be good to go with any of them. This one happens to be from Gina Designs. Now, when that side is flattened, the overall size of this card is 5x7. Now we can create the 2 white pieces that will be the snow slopes on the front of our card. For these, I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock that is 6.5 inches wide by 5 inches tall. I will do 2 score lines like we've done many times at 3/4 of an inch and 1.5 inches. And I will do the exact same thing to 2 pieces. So these 2 white pieces are cut and scored the same way. We'll fold towards ourselves first, reinforce that, and then fold away from ourselves and reinforce that. And do the same thing for both pieces. Now these pieces kind of mimic what that die set from Lawn Fawn creates. It just is creating it in a different size so that we can create different sized cards. This one again will end up being 5x7 inches. So these 2 pieces here are cut to the same way. All right, now you can see how this will fit on the front of our background and create a fun pop-up feature. The other one will go on top of that, creating a double pop-up feature. But now we need to kind of trim one of them down a little bit. Off that far right side, I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch off. That will just help everything fit nicely. I'm only doing that to one of the white pieces. So now you can see it fits into the folded line better. I'll show you more about that in a moment. All right, now we need to cut this into a slope. I like to use that same slope die that's included in the Peekaboo pop-up die set from Lawn Fawn. You could use any border dies you may have. Now the die isn't long enough to stretch over this once again because we're changing things up, but I'll just run it through twice. After I run it through once on one side, I will then take it and connect it over on the end with what we've already cut. So see, I'll tape it right here and run it through one more time. So you can take any of your border dies and make them cut a longer area just by shifting it over and cutting it twice. So there we have one of our slopes. This will be the one that's in the background that will allow us to do our first pop-up feature. Before we add this, I do want to do some stamping to that background. Before we did foiling, this time I'm doing stamping. There is this little snowflake image included in that Simon Says Stamp Lawn Fawn stamp set that I showed you at the beginning. I'm just stamping it repeatedly with a pool ink for a tone-on-tone background. I like images like this because when you stamp them repeatedly, no one ever knows you used a small image to do so. You could also use background stamps, pattern paper, whatever you want. I left the bottom blank because it will be covered anyways by those snow slopes. So you want to make sure you do your stamping before you start gluing things together. All right, so now let's glue this snow slope down. Once again, I'm going to flip it over, and on this little flap, I'll use my liquid adhesive. I am using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive today because it's super strong. Use whatever you know and trust. I'm putting that flap in the bottom left corner of our blue background, and we'll press that down and make sure it dries nicely. Then we can add our pop-up feature. This time I'm using the smallest of the pop-up die cuts from the Lawn Fawn Interactive Peekaboo pop-up die set. I put little pencil lines to show you where the score lines are. Again, we're folding along these score lines towards us. So I'll fold this little flap in and then the bigger flap in, again towards us. I'll use my bone folder to really flatten those down. Always the liquid adhesive or strong adhesive goes on that tiny little triangle flap. That's what always holds this pop-up element into your card. I'll put a little scribble there so you can see where that goes. I do like to use liquid adhesive again because it dries nice and strong, but use whatever you have. So I put adhesive on that little triangle. I'll flip it over and put it between the two score lines on that white piece. So I flip it over, and I like to put it either towards the middle or top between those two score lines. So I'm going to press this down, make sure it dries before we move on to anything else. I use a bone folder to really make sure it's stuck because no one wants their interactive cards to fall apart. Now we can close the white flap. We put liquid adhesive over on the edge of it here. Then we will fold this over so it attaches with the folded blue area, but in the middle. So watch, there are a bunch of fold lines over there. We want it on the second valley. So I'm going to press this over, fold it down. It's now in that valley. So there is a folded piece on top of it, which will be for our next pop-up. But this one fits right into that folded valley. Let's give it a test and watch. I'll pull the side and our little interactive element pops up. Okay, so now we need to add the other snow slope feature on top of this so we can add the double pop-up. Now this is going to fit right on top of it. I want to make sure this snow slope starts below the other one. I don't have to do this. I just wanted to for my design. So I'm making a little mark here at where the other snow slope stops over on the right. Again, you don't have to do this. I just wanted it to look like the back snow slope comes down and the other one goes down deeper than that. All right, so now I'm going to take that same snow slope die, line it up below that little mark that we made, and I'm going to make sure that this really slopes down to the left more than the other one did. I'm going to again have to cut it twice because this die isn't long enough to cover the entire piece. You could also cut your snow slopes by hand if you feel like you can do that. I'm not good with hand cutting, so I like to use whatever border dies I have. Again, this one's included in the interactive die set, so it's best to reach for. So now we have this piece with the folded edges on the left and a snow slope that goes down to the left. I do want to add a sentiment to this before we glue it together. It's always best to do your sentiment first. I thought it'd be fun to do some foiling. I'm using the Lawn Fawn Winter Big Scripty Word Hot Foil plates. These are great for adding a foil sentiment to your card. So I am taking the Oh Joy and I'm taping it onto the front of that panel. I like to use a piece of tape as a hinge and it'll hold it in place when we add the foil underneath it and do the foiling process. So I will flip this up, add our Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil underneath it so the pretty side of the foil touches the hot foil plate. Then I'll put the hot foil plate down, pick this up and put it face down onto my Spellbinders Glimmer machine. Again, you want to make sure this is hot. You'll press the timer button. It goes through a little timer cycle. When the timer button stops flashing, you take all of those plates out and run it through your die cut machine, which applies the pressure. As I mentioned before, I have a video in the top right that shows this process in more detail. There are different foil machines for different die cut machines, so you'll want to check with the manufacturer, but they all work very similar. All right, so now we can remove that and look at that beautiful silver foil. I also thought it'd be fun to stamp another sentiment underneath that, and that is from the Lawn Fawn Simon Says Stamp STAMPtember stamp set. I just stamped that with black ink. Now we can add this to our card. Once again, I'll use liquid adhesive on the back flap of this, and I'll glue it right into the corner of our card, so right on top of the other pop-up white piece. So I'll glue that right there, make sure it's nice and strong, and now we can do our interactive pop-up element. I'm using the same one I did before. I put pencil marks for the score lines. I'm folding along those score lines towards myself, so I get this funny looking piece, and I will use my bone folder again to flatten those. Onto that tiny little triangle where I'm putting some scribble marks for you to see, I will put some strong liquid adhesive. That's the only place you want your adhesive. If you put it anywhere else, your pop-up feature won't pop up. So make sure it's only in that little tiny area. Now fold that flap back, and again, between the two white score lines, we'll place this element. So I'm going to put it again towards the middle top between those two score lines. So there you can get a closer look. And now we can glue that flap closed. So I'll put liquid adhesive on the back left of that white flap, then fold it over onto that accordion folded blue piece. So watch, I'll just flatten everything down and press it all down. When this is all flattened, it's 5 by 7 inches. So I'll put something heavy on that, give it some time to dry. Once it's dry, check this out. When you pull the edges, you have 2 pop-up features. So this is a really fun way to take that interactive die set that's meant for a small vertical card to do 1 pop-up. And here we have a bigger vertical card that has 2 pop-ups. So it's all about using our supplies and making the most of what we have. All right, now I'll flatten the card and I'll put liquid adhesive on the little pop-up feature and add our first sledding element. Let's check it out. Oop, he's peeking out, so I got to move it a little bit to the right. So I'll just scoot it over a little bit on that pop-up feature. Let's check again and let's see. Oh, he's good enough. So now that one's attached. Onto the other pop-up feature, I'll add our other sledding element. Again, you want to make sure your card is flattened before you glue these, because that's what it'll look like when completely open. So that one hides well when it's closed. So all we have to do is trim off the rest of those pop-up elements. You can see they're a little bit too tall. So I'll just use my scissors to cut off the excess and also squirt a little bit more of that liquid adhesive underneath it to make sure that those elements are really stuck to those pop-up features. Now in my other video, I show you how to make these pop-up features clear so you don't see them. But in this video, I'm covering all of the pop-up feature with the die cut, so it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color those pop-up elements are. So here I'm putting a little more glue under there to make sure that they'll work. I like to keep testing and make sure that it works well before I give it some time to dry. All right, now we can add some other elements to this. You can add whatever you want to this as long as it doesn't get in the way of the pop-up features. I decided to use Lawn Fawn Snowflakes. So these are snowflake die cuts. I cut them from a silver glitter cardstock. It's like a champagne color. It's from Memory Box. I'll link to it below. It's a beautiful kind of antique silver look. And I'm gluing these into different positions on the card, kind of filling in the blank spaces, but always testing to make sure that they don't get in the way of the pop-up feature. Okay, so let's look at the completed card. It flattens to be a 5 by 7 card, so it goes in a 5 by 7 envelope. But when you take it out, it looks like a simple card. But as soon as you allow the card to pop up on its own or pull the sides, you'll see the fun elements that come up, making the card extra special. So this takes that Peekaboo pop-up die set, changes the size of the card, and does a double pop-up feature. It stands up nicely on display and is a great way to stretch your supplies. You can use those interactive die sets with whatever stamps and dies you have. I feel like when you invest in an interactive die set, you want to know a lot of ways to use it, right? To make the most of what you invest in. And that's what all of these cards show. You can create lots of different styles, sizes, and features using one set. Okay, now I have 2 bonus cards for you. These are just fun shaker cards using the same stamp set and some background dies. These aren't pop-up cards, but I wanted to include them because I used the same STAMPtember stamp set. Now for these, I'm using the Lawn Fawn Merry and Bright background die and the Oh What Fun background die. These both cut pieces that are 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, so they fit nicely in the center of an A2 card. Let's start with the Oh What Fun card. I die cut this 3 times from white cardstock, and I'm gluing the layers together, so I have some dimension. This dimension will form the walls of our shaker card because there's going to be little bits and sparkles that shake in the background in all of those openings. So by building up 3 or 4 die cuts, you have the walls for those shaker elements. I used liquid adhesive. You can use whatever glue you know and trust to put those together. Now for the next layer of this, I thought I'd use some double-sided tape on it. This will be helpful and you'll see why. I have some Altenew double-sided adhesive. I'm going to put some white cardstock on this. So I'm placing the white cardstock right onto the adhesive and I'll trim it off. So basically I'm creating a piece of white cardstock with adhesive on the back. So when we go to die cut this, it'll basically become a sticker, which really helps when you're assembling shaker cards. You could definitely use liquid adhesive for this layer, but for this layer, I think it's helpful to use double-sided tape. Now I'm taking the die and placing it onto the side of the double-sided tape. And I'll run that through my die cut machine. Any die cut machine will work. Now back to our stacked die cuts. These are the 3 or 4 white die cuts already glued together. I'm putting 1 more layer of liquid adhesive on top of that. Then I'll lay our die cut with adhesive, the double-sided adhesive on it, right on top. So the double-sided adhesive is facing up towards the camera. The release paper is facing up towards the camera. So it'll be ready to add the acetate to in a few minutes. Now I'm going to set that aside, and now I'm going to die cut another piece. This is white cardstock with double-sided adhesive on the back. I'm placing the die right on top and running that through my die cut machine. So now I have a white die cut with double-sided adhesive on the back. This will go on top of our acetate. There are a million ways you can put shaker cards together. Once you see me glue the layers together, it'll make more sense. Now I'm using an anti-static powder tool over our stacked die cuts, the ones that we glued together. I want to make sure nothing's sticky in there, and that's a great way to remove all of the stick. If it's sticky, your little shaker bits might stick to the walls instead of floating around nicely. All right, so now we need a background. This background is just a piece of craft cardstock. You can use whatever you want. On the back of that stacked die cut, I'm putting some adhesive and then I'll glue that to the background. In this case, I'm using a bigger piece. This is a 5x7 piece. I wanted to make this card bigger. When I glue this down, remember, we still have that double-sided tape up towards the camera, facing up towards the camera. It's ready to add the acetate once we fill in all the shaker bits. Now you can put anything you want into these openings. I thought I'd use some glass beads today. These are some older clear ones from Honeybee. I will also add some silver and blue ones. I got them from a glass bead pack. I'll link to those below. Anything tiny that'll fit into those open spaces and move around freely will work. You can even use regular beads. These are tiny little micro beads that don't have holes in them. I'm also adding some Lucy's Cards Little Stars. These are iridescent and really catch the light nicely. And I'm sprinkling those on top also. I'm trying not to put too much in because I don't want to distract from what we put on top of this card, but I do want some sparkle and movement in there. Once I've added everything I want to add, I will wipe away anything that's sitting on top of the die cut. We can then remove that release paper off of our stacked die cut, leaving all the adhesive exposed, and then we can take a piece of clear acetate and lay it right on top. Any kind of clear packaging will work. If you want to purchase acetate, I recommend the Simon Says Stamp acetate. It's a beautiful, thick, clear piece, and we'll lay that right onto the exposed adhesive. So this piece is cut to 3 1/4 by 5 inches. Now we'll take our other die cut that has the double-sided adhesive on the back, and we'll place that right on top of the acetate, sandwiching it between. Now the double-sided adhesive just really helps to adhere to the acetate, but you could use whatever adhesive you want. Basically, you have 3 or 4 stacked die cuts, then a piece of acetate, and then 1 die cut on top of that, giving a nice complete look. To make the letters stand out more, I used the same Oh What Fun die and cut from a pool cardstock, and I'm gluing those letters right on top of the acetate so that the Oh What Fun message stands out a bit more. I then decided to trim my background down a bit. I started with a 5x7 piece, but I'm trimming it down to kind of frame nicely around that die cut. This die cut fits nicely on an A2 card, but I wanted to show you it could be used for a bigger card. And you don't have to use a traditional card size. You can use whatever card size fits into your envelopes. So I trimmed that down, and now I'll glue this onto a 5x7 white folded note card that I created. Anything I want to trim off of this, I can. So I'll trim some of that off the bottom. And I end up with a card that's about 5 by 6 1/4 inches. It really doesn't matter the size, again, as long as it fits in your envelope. I will use a 5x7 envelope for this, and it'll work great. All right, so now I have my little critter from that Lawn Fawn Simon Says stamp set that I stamped, colored, and cut out, and I thought I'd add him right here on the bottom. For some more shine, I'm using my Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen to add sparkle to those blue letters. This is an inexpensive tool that I use a lot for adding shimmer to plain cardstock or even to stamped and colored images. It adds a lot in real life. All right, so here's the completed card. I have a 5x7 envelope. You can see I added a few red gemstones here and there to match the red in the sled of our little critter. We have those little sparkly bits that shake around on the inside, and because I stacked up die cuts, I formed the shaker walls, making more out of this fun word background die. And here is another design. This one is an A2 card, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, but it uses the Merry and Bright die. I again used craft cardstock, stacked up white die cuts, put acetate on top of that, put 1 more white die cut on top of that, and added red letters this time with that Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen, and then also added another one of those little critters. So this shows you can take any background die and make a shaker card from it. So there you have 2 very different types of cards using the same stamp set. I hope this shows you that you can take your supplies and stretch them using them creatively to get more from them. If you're interested in what I used today, I will link to the supplies below in my YouTube description. At the end here, I'll link to those other videos that I mentioned along the way for more inspiration. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you again soon. Have a wonderful weekend.